Hey, everybody, this is Darren Francis with Signals in Higher Education. And today, my special guest is Fritz Van Dover. He is the Director of Online Program Support Services at the University of Minnesota. Do I got that right, Fritz?
That's me.
That's you? All right. Well, hey, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate the time, Darren.
Yeah, well, I loved being on your podcast, and so selfishly had to bring you over onto to mine. But you are the co-host of Getting Stuff Done in Higher Ed, and great podcast. I think I was episode 7 or 8, maybe.
I think we're at 17 or 18 now. So
Oh, okay.
we're getting up there in the numbers, which is good.
That's great. That's awesome. Well, yeah, no, super excited about the conversation we had. It led to us saying, "Hey, let's do this over here." What I'd love to do is actually, before we get into sort of the main topic and things that we want to cover, I want to go a little bit into your bio. You've got an interesting one in higher ed leadership. People tend to enter into higher ed leadership and stay in it the whole time, and you did something unusual. You were at the institutional side doing some work, really inside of colleges to that was really close to faculty and to teaching, and then you separated from the institutional side for a little bit and went into the OPM space, which I want to talk about. But why don't you just start with um, going back to around 2000 when you were in the educational technology space where they convened for you. What was that like? What were you doing? And then what made you want to kind of consider moving from that into industry?
We're going to go way back. Okay. So in 2000, I was a graduate student at Washington University in St. Louis. So in history, American history, I had started a PhD in American history that fall of 2000 at WashU. And I did that. I got to go back a little further. So I was a history major in college, had a great experience, loved the writing, the research, all that. And I thought after I finished college, I thought, this is something I could see myself doing, being a history professor, because it's something I'd been interested in history since as a kid. So I talked to faculty at where I went to, a place called DePauw University, and they said, "Oh, you would be great at this, but it's really difficult to get a job, tenure track job. Otherwise, it's really hard. So if you want to do this, be really good in the technology side, the technologies that are impacting higher ed." So this is 1998 when I graduated, 1999 when I'm having these conversations. And I was technically adept, with computers at the time, tools on the computers. And so I went and became a web developer, and deliberately to feed that side of their advice, so that when I started graduate school and I was applying to them, I could say, I'm interested in this field, but I have the tech chops to explore this. And no one knew what it was going to be like. Web 2.0, for those of you who know what that is, did not exist yet. So, Google was barely out of beta. So, in 2000, I was at WashU. I was a first year graduate student, and I've told the story in other spaces, like in our podcast when I did my About Me episode. But I was interested in that intersection of technologies and humanities and teaching and research, and so I realized I was more interested in better in that, and I saw a better future for that for me in that space rather than continuing down trying to become a faculty member and researcher in this field of history. So I actually, that after my first year, that spring and summer of 2001, I shifted to a master's exit. Still did a master's thesis, wrote that in 2001, 2002, and finished my master's in 2002 that spring, and had a job already lined up at WashU to just join their staff at the College of Arts and Sciences in helping faculty figure out this intersection and how to use tools in teaching, how to use it in research. And so that really started my path into educational technologies. I didn't come at it from a purely tech side. I didn't come at it, um, you know, from a tech outwards. I came from a disciplinary, and then which was very common then. You were just bolting knowledge on, like, oh, I can learn how to do web development. I can learn how to build things in Flash and other kinds of tools that existed back in the bad old days. So I kept pulling that thread, and was at WashU for about 3 years. But I still had an itch to not just have a bigger degree, but I wanted to have this bigger context about higher education, where technology can make its way into an impact and have a role in the teaching and learning and research in the whole enterprise. So talk to my mentors again at DePauw. This is like 2004, I think, and said, I'm really interested. I don't want to be a faculty member, but I'm interested in the administrative side of technology in higher education. And this professor, Dennis Trinkle, who's a French history professor who's big in the technology side of higher ed, he said, well, you should just get a PhD in higher education policy and administration. And I was like, I didn't know this field existed. So that there was not a program for that anywhere in St. Louis, where I'm from and where I was living. Not at WashU, not at St. Louis University. I don't even think maybe there's one in the University of Minnesota or Missouri Columbia. But my wife, who's from Duluth, Minnesota, she was planning to move back to Minnesota after she finished her graduate degree in 2005. There's a program in educational policy administration at the University of Minnesota, which is right here in the metro in the Twin Cities. So I got into that, started my PhD, and the rest is history. So I did that, finished my PhD. I actually did go full time because there was no online courses. I was working, but I thought, man, I'm going to putter my way through this one course at a time for eternity. So I got an assistantship and just went full bore, 4 courses a semester, just plowed through the coursework in 2 years, and then went back into the workforce. I worked at Macalester College for 9 years in the academic technology space, which was a great experience because I got to work closely with faculty every day. My office was in an academic building. I was among historians and classics professors and English professors. So I was still immersed in the technology side, but also immersed in the faculty side, in that I was with them all the time. I went to faculty meetings. I got this deep, basically an education in the culture of higher education from the inside as I'm finishing my doctorate and thinking critically and learning about the whole enterprise of higher education. So, but along the way, I thought, even at Macalester, I was interested in the program side, the strategic side. How do institutions pick what they're going to do on an academic program side or just a strategic side with technologies and beyond? And I'm very interested in the online learning aspects of it. So, but it was hard. I mean, honestly, I'll be honest. It was hard to break into that as someone who worked at a small liberal arts college, a SLAC, as those, if you know, you know. So they're often there's a lot of them, but it's a very small slice of higher ed as far as student enrollments. And it can be hard to get out of that orbit. You're very relevant in those institutions, but to jump out to a different context can be hard. So I did finally, it took a while, but I got a role at the University of Minnesota doing academic technologies again at the College of Liberal Arts, and kept doing that. But was still trying to get into this strategic space. So it got to a point where I was starting to do bigger analysis and looking into things like what kind of things can the College of Liberal Arts do with programs. But I basically had to go out to come back into the space and build some other credibility. So this gets into the OPM that you mentioned. So I worked for a small OPM called Relearn-It that is based in St. Louis. I worked remotely from up here. And so they wanted a vice president of academic solutions. So I was essentially leveraging my knowledge of inside higher ed and the use of technology in it to help institutions and clients structure what kind of basically market research and what are the opportunities, helping them figure out what they could do and then how Relearn-It could help them do it. So working with some small institutions in healthcare related kinds of fields, such as kinesiology and exercise science. So it was a really good experience. I learned a ton. I really cut my teeth with the market research side. I mean, I knew plenty coming in, but it certainly taught me how to take all the knowledge I had about data analysis and and understand how, like, what are the inputs for that. So, but then along the way, an opportunity came up at the University of Minnesota. What was that? The spring of 2023. And so at a very high level. So, and I'm in an office that's part of the provost office, and for the whole system. So I'm helping units across the entire 5 campuses do this kind of work. That's one part of what I do. Do the work of what can we offer online or across the university? What's the opportunity look like? How much does it cost to really get to the place we believe it can go? How do we help this unit do it with funding and capital and investment? And gathering partners along the way, a small bench of partners to help units do that, so they don't have to go find a new partner or a partner every time they want to do something. And that's one half. The other half of my role there in this unit is I manage the university's Coursera presence. So the again more the identifying opportunities, what those can be, but the relationship with Coursera, the contractual side, the administration. So as new content is being developed, helping keep that moving along, the distribution of revenues that they come in every quarter. So I'm the guy, which is cool. I'm learning a ton, and I feel like I've got myself honed. I've honed what I'm doing, but it's a big it's big because the university likes this presence. We have hundreds of thousands of enrollments in our content I mean, we've been in there over a decade, but we have many, many, many enrollments at any one moment. So, and these are just people out in the world. We also have tons of people in our institution use that content. We have people from other institutions in a consortium in Coursera use that content. So it's a great interest. I'm at a really great intersection in this role at the university. I love it. We're a small team. I really value my colleagues, and my supervisor, my boss, is great. So it's good.
That's awesome. Just to clarify, I think so. So what you're talking about really is all online program development, right? So, or does some of it go into other program development, whether it's online or not? Like, do you start with a fresh program that doesn't exist, or do you start with an existing program and you take it online?
Both. I mean, really, there's so much to do. As you can imagine, the University of Minnesota has so many programs, it just technically, and so many zip codes. We've got a lot of programs. So there's not a big need to stand up a lot of new programs that maybe a smaller institution might be interested in doing. So there's plenty of work to be done in analyzing. And in my role, it's mostly looking at what are programs that could either online that can grow, or could offer an online offering and grow or establish itself. So we do, the word distributed in the name of our office is deliberate. So we also are working on harmonizing the different campuses to have students take online primarily, but if they want to transit between them, knitting together different expertise, teaching capacity, and programs around the university to knit them together. So if there's a program where a student does 2 years because they're living in the Twin Cities, and then taking another part of their course load from another campus online, or students from outside the university doing the same thing, like 2 years of their online program is here and another is here. So we're trying to, it's not just about online programs, although it is mostly, but about using the distributed resources of the university to create programs that reflect that, but really make a smooth and rewarding and effective experience for learners.
Got it. So, and also one more note, because I think this is in your history, if I read this right. What was your involvement with UPCEA?
So with UPCEA, over the past year or so, I was the chair of the Midwest region. So institutions that are UPCEA members that are in the Midwest US, even in Canada too. So I'd call it's a volunteer affinity group. So, we do some programming for members who are in that region. Like we have a yearly salon where it's an online gathering. We meet up for those of us who go to the in-person annual meeting or any other meetings. We meet up. So I was the chair of that. I was the incoming and then the chair, and now I'm the past chair. So I go to our meetings once a month and help our new chair make sure she's got what she needs to keep going. So that's been a really great experience. And I go to the annual meeting to represent our office. I'm one of several people who go from the university to the annual meeting.
It seems like a great organization. I had the opportunity to interview Stacy Chiramonte from UPSIA several months ago, and got immersed in the great impact that they're having. So when I had to kind of flag that, it does seem really relevant to your work and into ways that you can certainly contribute to the broader community.
I went to Solar. Actually, this is one of the last things I did before COVID landed. This was in February of 2020. I went to the Solar conference in New Orleans that February. Oh, what does Solar stand for? Strategy and Online Learning and Resources or something. So that was really, again, that's when I was trying to build up my credibility and my skills and expertise to make the shift from academic technologies to online program support and administration, the kind of work I'm doing now. So I was able to go to that, and it really helped me understand, and I had to meet people to make my way into this space I'm in now. And it didn't convince me that at that moment that like I need to go to a firm to do that. But it was, again, I was gathering information about how to do that. What kind of expertise do I need? What kind of knowledge do I need? And I did a lot of data work anyway in the work I was doing at the university at that point. So I realized I really needed to keep leveraging that and building on that, among other things.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. So today, let's kind of go into the existing world, because really program development generally is a space that is presented with some fairly significant headwinds in higher ed, and so I'd love to kind of get your take. But like, if a program comes to you asking whether there's an opportunity in the marketplace, what are they asking you for, and then how do you go about helping them make that decision? What's involved?
Yeah, so it can happen a bunch of different ways. So like I said, we're a small unit. There's 1, 2, 3 full-time folks. And then we have our bosses. He's 0.6 with us. The other 0.4, he's a professor of horticulture, and he studies turf grass and does research on turf grass. So we try as much as we can to make the rounds around different parts of the university. We're on different committees. We're part of different organizations. We just go to things, virtual or otherwise, to talk about what we do. Especially my boss, Eric Watkins. He'll go to meetings of the deans and the chancellors and talk about what we do, so that the services that we offer, which are by and large free to the university, we're cost pool supported. So we're a public good for the university. That gets filtered down. So the deans will talk to the department chairs and other unit heads and say, hey, we have this resource that we can utilize to figure out, can we offer this program, or what are the opportunities? So it can come through that. Sometimes it's just in conversations I have with department chairs and other people around the university. But however it comes to us, or sometimes we'll reach out to units. A department head or a program head might say, we think this program can do this. Is that valid? Or they'll say, is there any opportunity? Well, one thing we do is, I said we try to get around. We do get around. We go to once a year, approximately, we go to each campus. So we get in the car, sometimes all 4 of us, get in a minivan, a university minivan, and off we go. I like to call it the road show because it makes it sound funnier. And sometimes, we have lots of funny conversations along the way, as you might imagine. So we'll go there and we'll talk to each of the deans at a campus, or department heads, or the chancellor there, the other campuses. And here, what they'll do is they know we're coming, so they'll gather insights or gather things they want to talk about from their leadership or their departments. And a lot of things will surface there. Like, oh, we have this program that we're proposing. Should we or could we propose an online offering at the same time? Or they're planning to. So, sometimes we get in at the start of a conversation about a program, or it's already way underway and we're coming in late just to help see what we can do. But, what I do in the market research side is to just look and see what, like most other individuals who do this work, you're looking to see I try to look at what's happened in the space, other similar programs, who's out there, what have they done, what do they seem to be doing right now, what are the jobs and occupations into which people who have this credential can go into, as broad a horizon as I can get it. Because I know, look, I'm a history major, I have 2 history degrees. I know careers are meandering things. Not everyone goes to, like, I majored in bio, then I went to med school, and now I'm a doctor. Or I majored in whatever, history or poli-sci, then I went to law school. Not every career, few careers are as linear as, frankly, a lot of people think they are or should be, which is part of what makes them interesting, and sometimes and often very fruitful, interesting, lucrative, all kind of positive adjectives you can imagine. Not that they're all, well, careers are hard, but people go in interesting directions. You never know where people are going to go. I saw today that Alan Greenspan died, the former Fed chair. Apparently he went to Juilliard and was a great saxophone and clarinet player. I would never have guessed until I read his obit on NPR today. So now I want to know how he became an economist in the Fed chair with a Juilliard background. But that's,
I think that would be a fascinating story in and of itself. Yeah.
So, what I try to do is, what my goal is to, as defensively as possible, figure out what could an enrollment look like for this program at the university, a number. And then I discount it because I don't want to be too rosy pictured. And then I go backwards from that with the people I work with, in particular our director of marketing, to find out, okay, what will it cost to do that? To get that many students per whatever the enrollment cycle is. Let's say it's once a year or twice a year. And then we're working with our partners that we have on the marketing and student support side, the external partners. What's that cost look like? And then I work with the program, whether it's the chair, the head of the program, the department chair. Sometimes it's the budget director, the CFO of the campus. What are their costs right now? And what would they need to do this new, let's say we're increasing enrollment by 50%. Can you handle 50% more students? And then what do the financials internally look like to do that? So I'm trying to get very granular out in the ether. What would it look like if you got this many students, and what are all the costs that would go into that, from personnel, any recurring costs, technology, any costs that they want to put on top of that program, any cost that it should bear. And then what does that look like year over year? Let's look out 10 years and be conservative and see what it looks like. And if it looks good at this discounted enrollment, and let's amplify the costs a bit, and personnel and the cost of their wages and everything going up every year, and the cost of marketing going up. And if it's looking solid, because there's costs that are going to be paid regardless of whether this program moves ahead like we think or not. So then we feel like we're onto something. So then we look at, and this is going to be changing a bit because of the strategic plan the university just approved late last fall. How can we help them? What kind of supports do they need to do this? Because very few to no units at the university just have a boatload of cash sitting around to invest like this, because there's always a run-up cost. You're putting out money to market something, and you're not going to enroll any students or enough students yet to offset that right out of the gate. So, our current structure is we provide a loan, a 2-year investment that that helps keep them, afloat, or to limit losses. And then once they have, it's like booster rockets. We help them get to escape velocity. They get going. We peel off, but the pro forma is built so that it can sustain the payback to us over, say, 5 years for the resources that we use to invest into them. So that's a very quick overview. It's not always that. It is never that boilerplate recipe like that. So, but that's ultimately what I'm trying to do. Is I've been thinking about this as we approached our conversation today. I feel like an archer, and someone's throwing hoops, like little hoops, or like the rings you toss at a carnival to get on top of the bottle. Like they're throwing them out in the air, and I'm trying to like boing, like shoot an arrow through it, because I'm trying to figure out what are the costs, what are the outcomes financially for the program and the department. What are these people? Can these people do something with this credential? Can they elevate their career? Can they get a job? What are the earnings? And not that it's just about people's earnings, but like you have to account for that. You at least have to make it known that we would expect this kind of employment opportunities for this credential, and these are kind of earnings range you could see. People enter careers all the time, not because they're lucrative, teachers, historians, whatever. But they need to know what the dynamics of it are. And to know, like, look, this isn't sustainable cost wise. Like at this tuition, like I just worked with a program, and it wasn't on my advice, but they dropped their tuition by 35%. It's a master's program that we have been supporting. A 35% drop. I mean, they were already below the new federal guidelines and limits on professional master's programs. This does not fall into that professional category. Now they're way below it. So, I mean, and that was just because they want to be competitive, but we still, we looked under the hood to make sure it worked financially. But there's a lot, there's a lot of plates spinning in this. And my goal is to have all that stuff visible. Nothing is opaque, so that when the decision is made to invest in one of these, we know what we are risking financially. The program knows where the risks are, what kind of risk they have to bear, and then but any potential outcomes for the program are clearly known for the people who want to potentially take it.
I mean, I don't want to catastrophize based on just sort of generic understanding of the weight of the argument pro and con towards someone's education today. But like so much of the news, so much of the attack on higher ed isn't helpful, isn't merited, spreads problems at one end of the spectrum of higher ed across all of it, as though every institution's the same and every program's the same. But like you as the archer have this experience successfully and over time helping to map onto a program some level of potential success. And so how much can you still rely on from history of what has been of what predicts success of a program versus sort of now like a level of unknown, or even just a perceived level of unknown amongst those that are holding this program? That are like, oh man, I don't know, like what's new in terms of variables, or what's no longer working as a predictive element that had in the past.
Well, yeah, this is an important point, and I did a presentation about this it wasn't UPSI this year, it was at Insights EDU, which is a conference offered every year by a company called Education Dynamics, which is one of our marketing partners. We work with them quite a bit. So I think of it like a three-legged foundation for program forecasting programs. You got your trailing indicators, so that's conferrals from whatever programs you want to compare your program to, whether it's one zip code or a dozen. The current indicators, what kind of jobs do people in this category, with this credential, what kind of jobs are they getting? And trying to really understand the range of those jobs, not just lawyers are getting law jobs. That's a bad metaphor, but and then what does that occupational space look like in the future? And that is the hardest, and that is the one I'm still trying to become much better at, because, and it's always going to be the hardest, because the pace of change right now, even if you took AI out of it, the pace of change in the labor market was already going so fast, because just computing power in general was changing how fast people can do their jobs, the knowledge you need just to be an expert. You can't be an expert in everything now. So the turnover is so fast in disciplines and professions. It's crazy. I mean, I read something, I can't even remember where it came from, but essentially it said, people were used to having a job for their career. Maybe it was at one company. Like my dad worked at one company effectively from 1971, truly one company from 1971 or two until he retired in 2007. He was a graphic designer. It was a small firm, so he worked his way up to become president. But people did that in corporations. Now people are they're adapting to changes in corporate world and just the business world that happen so fast. Like they're getting laid off or they're having new jobs, and then now the cycle is so fast. It's like we can't adapt. We can't learn fast enough. That's the hard thing. So what I try to do is, like, the trailing stuff is important. How many history degrees have our competitor institutions conferred in the last 10 years? That's helpful, but or in the last 5 years, but there's so much noise in there that it's hard to control for. Like COVID is a huge disruption in there. They changed everything. It's almost not even worth. I'm always most interested in, like, what's the last, and they don't have this in IPEDS, but what were enrollments? How can we estimate enrollments? Because enrollments, if you can get an idea of what the enrollments are at institutions you're comparing to, then you start to understand what's the possible enrollment we can have, because you start to line up, okay, here's a program that's doing well at whatever institution, University of pick a state. We have a similar curriculum, we have a similar structure, support structures. Maybe our tuition's lower. Maybe we look at it and we're like, we have better support structures or better curriculum. Wow, we have an internship that's part of it, that's baked in, we think is much better, and we see it resonating. People are searching for these kinds of things because we're looking at search data, what people find for these programs. So I'm trying to figure out, what could our enrollment be? And I'm looking at the most recent one that I can interpolate from recent IPEDS conferral data, because if I can figure out, like, if they can get that enrollment and we see this kind of demand for these kinds of jobs and occupations, then we start to make some educated, informed guesses. Maybe that's a bad word. Interpolations, deductions about what could our enrollment be at the most, and then how can we tick it up? How much, again, what would it cost to tick up our enrollment in that program space? So the historical stuff, even as a historian, bad one and a lapsed one I am, that's the old saying, history doesn't repeat itself, but it sure does rhyme. Yeah, but it's like, I think of it more like the stock market. Just because this stock did great 10 years ago, over the last 10 years or 5 years, doesn't mean it's going to do well in the next 5. Like, maybe the financials are all different or the markets change, whatever. So looking backwards is, I had a graph in my presentation I did. It showed, a conferrals histogram. and I made this fake dotted line that went out like this. I was like, you can't, and I even put, don't do that. I had an arrow, don't do that. Just because the slope is this doesn't mean the slope's going to be that. Slope can be, look at the slope of people buying CDs up until like 1999, 2000. And then here's Napster, and it was like this. So, in 1999 or in 98, they were looking at the record execs were like, we can't go wrong. The slope's going to go forever. So I try to look at the most recent enrollment data. So I have to interpolate enrollment data, which is its own algebra, exercise in algebra, um, to figure out like, can we emulate that? Could we get there? Why isn't ours as like that? If we're looking at similar, maybe competitors or just similar programs that we know are comparable, why are we not there? Can we get there? And what are the features that appear to be helping them get there? Do they just advertise a ton? Is it a crappier program that just gets more advertising? That's a thing, you know? I can advertise a crappy car and people might buy it in droves. Um, so it is an ever interesting and engaging exercise to do this work.
I wonder if this is really off, but when you think about online program development, are those programs almost necessarily closer to the job, getting the student, whoever that person is that's going to take these programs, are they necessarily like more on the edge of employment or closer to employment outcomes than the face to face? In other words, are you just by the nature of putting things online, are you doing more certificates? Are you doing more um, uh, bespoke programs that someone's going to enter on the graduate side, or something that is just way closer to the job itself than say a student coming in first year freshman, right? Like,
So it's an important question. I think by their nature, a graduate degree is trying to prepare you for a much more refined landscape and horizon of opportunities. So if you're getting a master's in, we have a master's of strategic communications. If you're getting that master's degree, you know the kind of space you're going into. You're not going to be a biologist, you're not going to go really broad potentially. So yes, by and large, these programs are at the graduate level. Certificates, you'd think so as well. We don't do as many of these yet in our unit. Our College of Continuing and Professional Studies does a ton of certificates. So they're not, I'm not saying they're handling all of that now. They just, they do a lot of them. And so as we prepare how we support certificates, which is its own different beast, because trying to figure out that space is very hard. It's way harder than uh, a Title IV funded IPEDS tracked program space, because it's harder to predict and get a sense of what's out there, what have they been doing, what resonates, because there's no data to really show it. You're creating your own data to try and figure that out. So yeah, I mean, that helps in that the master's programs, and we primarily are working with master's programs right now, but we're supporting, there's an accounting program at our Crookston campus that's an accelerated online that we are helping to boost their enrollments. But again, that's an accounting bachelor's program. It's pretty clear where you're going to go with an accounting bachelor's. So, but I still, I'm still thinking about, like, from a landscape of opportunities, how do you best prepare, even in that more compact lane of master's degree? How do you prepare learners for a broader horizon? And then I'm going to say it's not my job to do that, but I advise the programs we're working with, like, look, from a curricular perspective, this program that's doing well, because I know from recent conferral numbers, they've got a lot. This is what their structure looks like from a curricular perspective. They've got all these electives or these internships or whatever the features are that, again, in addition to tuition and brand equity and positioning and all that, like, this is what appears to be boosting them above others, including often us. So I bring that to the attention of the program director, just so they know, like, it's not just about marketing dollars. Like, there's a real, the features are as important as, we're highlighting the features of the program. So if there's something with what appear to be stronger features, I do bring that to their attention.
yeah, I mean, the Yeah, it just helps to kind of see the guardrails of the process that you're having to go through each time you go through this exercise. And I appreciate that the future leaning data set is the scariest and least predictable in terms of the job market. Um, but a couple of more questions on this. Like one would be, um, how does how do you gather sort of employer data feedback, or do you gather employer related and data and feedback in a process for some of these? Like, are there some where it's so obvious? Oh yeah, we have this great employer partnership with XYZ down the road. We're going to involve them in this decision or whatever. Or others might, maybe that would be too opaque or difficult. But I'm just curious, like where that comes in and if it comes in.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on the program. So we don't. Um, I would say we don't host or run that kind of interaction because often a program, again, like I will point out, hey, this master's program has, they're talking about how they have this employer advisory board or something, but often they have that for master's programs. They have some inputs, and we will. What I try to do is at least bolster or provide inputs that feed into and complement that. So and even and make them aware, if you don't have this, this is something that is advisable. And there are units at the university that help get those going and help sustain them. Often they're at a collegiate level. You can imagine like Minnesota Carlson, our school of business, they have a whole structure for creating and supporting those kinds of relationships. So my goal is to complement and feed into that for those programs that have it, and to strongly recommend that they stand that up if they don't, and it looks to be an important part of that program and professional space, or at least the programmatic side amongst other institutions I'm looking at. Because it is, yeah, you have to get that feedback. Even like we're not really I wouldn't say we're in the liberal arts space. There's just not a ton of liberal arts online programs, especially at the undergraduate level, but even the graduate level. Although I'm looking at one right now, a certificate in that space for our Duluth campus. But that's really important because I feel like this is where there's a breakdown, and this feeds into that. I agree with you. I think there's a lot of just outright inaccurate information about higher ed in general. Yeah, it is expensive, and we could spend the rest of our lives talking about why it's expensive. There's a lot of good, legitimate reasons it is. It doesn't mean it's right, but like we can talk about why it's expensive. But we can also talk about, well, I won't get into that. I have strong opinions, but I think
This
one of
is
the
the
things
space for strong opinions, man.
employers and institutions don't talk well together. Employers in general should be talking about what they need. What do we need from people who are completing any degree, but certainly ones that are very career and job oriented? What do you need from accountants? Tell us what you need, and we will. If you're a regional employer or whatever, like if you're whatever scope geographically, like we want to provide learners who are coming out and they're ready to, they're turnkey, they're ready to go, and they're adaptable. It's not just that they have like, hey, I developed stuff in COBOL or Cold Fusion. I'm a Cold Fusion developer. We wouldn't want to do that. So I think there's a disconnect between institutions and employers that is, I don't know if it's been wider, it just feels very wide right now, very big. And the institutions that close that gap, they, I'm not saying they're like absolved of all the critique and the noise, but it seems like they roll under the radar more. They're not taking heat, certainly not from large employers or professions that have a collection of employers where you hear from a lot, like, banking, for example, like.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, and really, I mean, gosh, there's really not a lot of usefulness for critique in this space, there's more I more want to join you on this in this view into the unknown of where things go from I can make reliable scientific predictions on the number of seats we could fill or the number of uh, enrollments we could get to this tension that says, you know, how do we truly align the students' expectations for long-term success? And that right now, to your point, there feels like this widening gap. Do you have any suspicions, like if you could run a magic wand here and say, perfect scenario, at least for these types of programs, this is how it should be done? I mean, do you have even if it's unreasonable that you could scale it or something, is there like is there something that you could apply a magic wand to that would help eliminate this in a different way for us?
Well, I'm going to answer, and I hope I'm getting to your question. I I'd mentioned how I have to interpolate, guess at what are the enrollments that kind of the programs we're looking at that we're evaluating ours against. Knowing enrollments across by zip code, I'll just say it for those who do this kind of work, that would be immensely helpful to understand what the enrollments are. Because if you understand enrollments over time, you can see where when they're starting to fade, or it would just make it's more current, because a conferral is a trailing enrollment indicator. A bachelor's conferral could be from a student started 6 years ago, which means they were looking to enroll 7.5 years potentially before that. That world doesn't exist anymore. 7.5 years ago, you know, the spring of 2019 was pretty nice. I went to Paris with my family. We flew for $500 a person. Can you imagine that now? That world doesn't exist. So, but if I knew the enrollments for this past year, that would be very helpful, because then you can start to see, like, okay, here's what people, given all the economic conditions and all the things that went into the inputs and why they potentially decided to enroll in this other institution's program a year ago versus 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 years ago, would be really helpful. That if I had a magic wand that I could wave, I would certainly tap that on the head first. I don't know if the federal government would ever require it, and I don't know if institutions would be willing to give it up. I mean, I suppose if they were required to, they would have to, but I imagine there'd be some pushback, because that's market intelligence in a way. That's like giving you sales data out every year, in a way that institutions, I mean, because trust me, they track it. They know what their enrollments are.
Yeah. No, I can see how it could be a conflict, but I could also see how it might need to be something forced on at a national strategy level for educating and aligning education to employment, which seems to be the goal. It seems like that could come and might have some short term.
Does that get to the question you're answering? Is that too granular?
No, it does. I guess I wonder, when you see something, when you mentioned the work that you did in helping assess whether to bring a program online or not, your work sits in the uncomfortable space of uncertainty in higher ed. Like you are in that space of it, and you're making rational, logical decisions with the data that you have, but you're also acknowledging at the same time that there's just this uncomfortable sense for an inability to account for new variables that you know exist too.
Yeah, and I do deliver bad news. I mean, I've there's plenty of programs I talk to, they say, "Hey, we think we see this." And I would say, "I've looked across every facet I can find, all the kind of similar programs, the occupational outcomes. It's no one enrolls that many students in this program right now, and it's certainly not conferred that many. I can't see an opportunity for that. I There was a doctoral program that someone, the program director said, "Hey, we think we can enroll 20 students a year in this." And I said, "No one has ever done that, by what I can tell, and nothing indicates there's that much opportunity in the occupational space for people with that." So I would not. I'm not going to attach my name to saying you can do this. And here's the button up data that I've used to do this. Here it is for you, because there's more and more, as you might imagine, there's more and more requirements to do this kind of work when an institution, a department, a college, a program, whatever, is proposing a new program. So I've delivered plenty of tough news. Like, I think this is a very interesting field, but I don't the universe doesn't seem to want that. So it doesn't I'm not saying cut the program. I'm just saying I don't see growth. I see stability, or I try to give I've directional. Like, is this thing consisting? Is it new? It's neutral? Does it have a neutral outlook, a growing outlook, or a diminishing outlook? Sometimes that's the first filter, and then based on that, then we start looking more, like going really deep dive into other kinds of programs to see what are other programs that seem to be doing well, or what can we do that we think would be really differentiating and exciting to do for this particular kind of program. We connect to resources at the university, so we don't do instructional design. We connect to who does it. So it might be internal to their unit. A lot of colleges have their own teams, so we coordinate with them. It might be that we tap one of the central instructional design units, the central one. There's one. Or we say, look, if you want to hire someone to come on, like, look, we'll pour that into the pro forma too. You want to hire someone to do this thing? Maybe it's a professor, but it could be an enrollment support person, et cetera, et cetera. Look, we can bake in whatever cost you want and see what the impact is.
Yeah. Well, you've been very generous with your time. I kind of want to close on just this where you're placing your bets programmatically. And now I would say you can still have your institutional hat on, for the work that you're doing today, or you could broadly just look at the market and programmatically say, like, where is the biggest bang for the buck? I hate that term, but where is the best opportunity for online programmatic growth at an institution? Like, and is it an area, or is it like boy, when programs have X, Y, and Z, they tend to do well? Like, I'm just curious, like, how would you try and just assess where the best opportunities are nationally, even just to take the pressure off of your own institution, or yeah.
This is a fun one. So, I mean, I'm not going to say anything that's surprising. I think, taking calculated risk is nothing new, but I think institutions that know what they're good at and lean into that. So, it might be that they have a great program in whatever. I'm not going to say like, oh, we all need to be in accounting. Everyone needs it. Accounting is huge. It's big growth. It's big growth coming. And I've put accounting out there. Like, I'm sure there's great opportunities in accounting. We seize them, but I'm not going to say that like there's one area that needs to grow or will grow. But what I will say is that institutions that have deep expertise in something, and maybe it's horticulture, agriculture, whatever. Like, we're trying to bring, and there's interest from Coursera to put. We have a great ag school or college of food, agricultural, and natural sciences. We want to put programming in Coursera that leverages that, because we have deep geospatial computing and agriculture. That's really interesting stuff. So, and they want it. So so institutions that build on what they're already good at instead of trying to be good at something they have no background in. And I realize that's going to overlap and not going to work for everyone, but building on that, and then making the programs you put out there, online or otherwise, really good, like a good experience getting in. And I don't mean like entertaining good. I mean high quality, that people get something out of it and they're telling you along the way and afterwards, I really got a lot out of this. It helped supercharge my path into this program or this career or this whatever that their goal is. So, instructional design, the experience has to be good. The technology foundation has to be good. I tell people when I'm doing market research, I think you can get to this number of enrollments and grow, et cetera. I'm basing it on the assumption that this is going to be a kick-ass program, experience-wise. Because I can't factor in otherwise. So it has to go in that assumption. Like they're going to have the supports they need to do well, whether it's academic support or all the kinds of student supports that you see that frankly support great on-ground experiences for students that learn in person or taking programs in person. The places that have deep resources, their students, it's not purely predictive. I mean, there's socioeconomic predictors that are a huge part of it, but those kinds of internal supports and excellent experiences can overcome those socioeconomic realities and help people finish and elevate them and continue into flourishing careers and lives. So I tell them, like, I'm assuming this is gonna be great because I don't get to control whether it's great, but that's y'all's job. So I think as institutions lean into what they're good at, leveraging the programs they already have that are have a solid footing and grow on that, like it's not going to be explosive growth for everyone, but it means stable or sustained growth for them. It could be that they have some programs that do great, others where they're often just going to chug along quietly, but those can do really well. I built the Proforma. We have a program. It's a master's program. It's not that big. It's very popular, even though it's not that big. They get plenty of enrollments. It's very inexpensive to market, and it does great. They had enough room in their budget to hire a new tenure track professor. That's amazing. And we gave them a boost. Like, look, we'll fund it for the first year, that position, and then you're going to carry it after that, and it works. It's like they have, I don't know if they even have 30 students enrolled at any one time, maybe 25. I don't know the numbers. That's why I'm not talking about the name of the program. But this is not a 2,000 student monolith. This is like, but it's doing what it's supposed to do.
Right, right. I can close my eyes when we're talking, and I can hear what you're saying as sounding extremely similar to someone who runs a startup accelerator. Like you're really at because the same tension exists for someone who's going to maybe invest in a seed round in an early stage product idea, right? You say yes, this has the market for it. This has all the right ingredients from several different areas, but the truth of the matter is it's all in the magic of what you bring and share. At the end of the day, data is only going to get you so far. It's got to be delivered on. But well, this is fascinating. I would love to actually continue this conversation and have iterations of looking at like program development and what's working in your space over time, because I mean over the next 6, 12, 18 months, because I just feel like we are on a trajectory where things are changing fast, and you're obviously learning a ton as you go. Would love to keep hearing about it.
First of all, thanks so much for having me today. I've really, just like our conversation on our podcast, Aaron, it's been really great to continue talking here. I really appreciate it. What I think would be really great about doing that is that the University of Minnesota, we are having, just like I said, our strategic plan for 2020 or 2030 was approved last fall. Part of it is to develop a bigger structure for supporting online programs. So I can, not that I'm going to reveal everything, but like I can talk about, we are tacking to try to do more, and here's what it's like as we're going. Here's what it's like to be in that change. So we're going to be changing. We're going to, depending on what the final approval is, like we're going to grow our staff and we're going to grow the scope of what we do. So I think it would be, I can see talking like, oh my gosh, we're battling this right now, or we're working with this right now, and here's what seems to be working and stuff. I mean, I'd have to be careful with what I say, but I think it'd be interesting to talk along the way about like, here's what it's like as an institution's trying to build up what they're doing.
You can just tell this is a space. There's no one to have this conversation. Is you can just tell this is a space that is not static. It is changing rapidly, and yet it's hard to know exactly where it's going to go. It's great that you have the trailing data and even the current metrics to sort of work from, but I also appreciate just your honesty today and talking through like what you don't know and what and where the gaps are in the space. It's a fascinating field to be in higher ed today, and yeah, let's continue the conversation. Would love to.
I love that.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for taking the time, Fritz.
Thanks so much, Darren.